In this video, I'm going to talk about how poverty influences a child's upbringing and their life in the family. So first off, an important thing to know is how to determine if a family is living in poverty or not. So to do this, we compare a family's income and a family's threshold. Factors that go into a family's threshold include the number of people in the household, but it varies between if they have 2 children versus 3 children, if they have someone that's not contributing income. And the threshold level also is determined by the state that you live because it takes into consideration the cost of living and the amount of pay that people get in regards to the state they live. So if a family's income is less than the family's threshold, then the family is considered to live in poverty. And if a family's income is greater than or equal to the family's threshold, then they are not considered to live in poverty. And this can be very hurtful for the families that are right on the threshold because they may not get certain assistance levels that the people that live in poverty can get. So an example of this is a family of 4, which includes 2 children, 1 mother, and 1 father, has an income of $24,000. The threshold for a family of 4 in 2017 is $25,100. Is this family considered to live in poverty? So the answer to this question is yes, because the family's income of $24,000 is less than the family's threshold, which is $25,100. So to help explain poverty, there are 2 types of terms we like to use, which is one, culture of poverty, which is stating that poverty is not a result of independent inadequacies, but is the outcome of a larger social and cultural atmosphere into which successive generations of children are socialized. So basically, this is saying that children that grow up in poverty are less likely to go and get an education because they don't have the money for it or receive certain opportunities. And so then they are more likely to live in poverty, and so are their children. So it's basically saying that poverty is just a cyclical movement as time goes on. And then social exclusion is individuals or groups are systemically blocked from resources or opportunities. So, for instance, if a family does not live in poverty, their child is more likely to get ACT tutoring or SAT tutoring, whereas a child that lives in poverty cannot have these resources throughout their lifetime. So children usually get tutoring throughout their life, but the children in poverty cannot. And so they might not get into college or have the opportunity to get higher paying jobs, which then brings them back into the poverty, and it just keeps the cyclical movement going. So children that live in poverty, they go through different lifestyles than children that do not live on poverty. They can take on different roles, which are known as adultification, and there's typically about 4 types that children can experience throughout their life in poverty. So the first one is precocious knowledge. It is the most common type as children gain knowledge that is considered to be advanced for their age. So a lot of this happens when they live in small households and their family can't keep those conversations away, or if they see that their family is financially struggling, they hear their parents talk about needing welfare or assistance, or they can't buy the toy that they want because they don't have the money for it. It's those things that add to the child's knowledge of the situation that they're in. So, for example, Emily lives in a poor neighborhood in a very small house. At night, she can hear her parents arguing about financial problems. Through these arguments, she learns that her family is on welfare. So at the young ages, children are learning more and more about financial problems, which adds to the stress of the child because they they can't do anything about it, but they know in the back of their head that they are not going to live like the same life as another child that isn't in poverty because they don't have the funds, and they feel almost as if they are a burden on their family because of the financial strain. So the next type is mentored adultification. And this is when a child participates in adult like activities, but the parent still remains the head figure in the house. So, for example, Haley lives in a single mother household, and to support the family, her mom works two jobs. While her mom is at work, Haley has to take care of her two younger siblings and has to make them dinner. So, even though Haley's mom is remaining the head of the household, she has control over Haley and her younger siblings. Haley is having to take care of her younger siblings and make them dinner while their mom's at work, which puts her as if she is the head of the household, but she's being mentored by her mom. So she's cooking dinner and acting like the mom when her mom isn't there. The next one is purification. So this is when the parent is no longer in charge and the child acts more like a friend than a child. So, for example, Tyler's father recently disappeared from his life, leaving his mother to support the family. In need of assistance, his mom asked him to get a job to financially help the family. In addition, she needed him to take care of his two younger brothers. She usually used Tyler to confide into at night about the current situation regarding his father. So, in this situation, Tyler is no longer the child because he is financially contributing to the family, he is taking care of younger brothers, and he's being confided in to give advice to his mother about his dad leaving. Now, being a child, you don't really have the knowledge to give the advice that another adult would give, but the mom has really no one else to go to, so she's going to her child instead, which blurs the barrier of parent in charge and child below. Also, by contributing financially to the family, Tyler's mom can't necessarily discipline him because he has just as much power as she does. And that's why this type of adultification can also be known as spouseification. So the child takes on the man of the household to help with the family's financial problems. And the last type is parentification, and this is the least common of the four, just because it's when the child and the parent completely switch roles. So the child is the in charge one and the parent is not. This is usually seen with families of substance abuse, just because the child is worrying about the parent versus the parent worrying about the child. So, for example, Chloe is a 17-year-old girl and her parents suffer from substance abuse problems. She has had to manage her mom going in and out of rehab and to ensure that her father doesn't end up in jail. So in this situation, Chloe has completely grown up. At this point, she is no longer caring about herself, but instead she is caring about her parents, even though it should be the other way around. So this type of adultification really makes it to where the child has to grow up and can't live the same childhood that other children are living. So here are the sources, but in short, poverty really impacts children's way of life and the way they think of life and compare themselves to other children because they are forced to grow up at a faster rate than others.